$40, that's enough for me to play some games and to get some good food on the Six Flags trip. Who's going to miss it? You know, choices are all over the Bible. Adam and Eve had the choice, obey or disobey. Abraham had choices, leave his hometown or follow the strange God, to stay put or to go on an adventure. Moses had choices, go back to Egypt and deliver God's message or keep running. Joseph had choices, stay with Mary or leave her. Jesus had choices, turn these stones into bread, keep following the will of God, go to the cross, or stay safe. God has choices in Scripture. Create or not to create. Forgive or not to forgive. And we remember that Jesus is God, and all those choices Jesus had are God's choices. Have you ever thought about God having choices? Thinking about, do I do this or this? In Scripture, we see a God who often agonizes over choices. It's a God who can relate to us in all that we do. As we agonize over choices, God also has choices. Jesus had tough choices. God knows what it's like when you're not sure what to do and you're trying to weigh and trying to figure out what's the right path. Jesus and God has choices too. Or last night we talked about the scenario of choosing whether or not to follow Christ. Choosing whether to believe in God and or believe in Jesus is one thing. Choosing to follow Christ is a very different thing. You can believe God exists and believe Jesus shows the way, but choose not to follow and give your life to God. There are many people like that. I'm sure we all can think of some like that. We talked about in some of the small groups, do you think the majority of people who claim they're Christians and go to church are those who just kind of believe in God and go to church on Sunday but don't really follow, or ones that really follow Jesus with their whole heart? I don't know about the other groups, but my group said, yeah, we think the majority of people are probably those who just kind of say, yeah, I believe in God, I want to go to church, but I don't really follow with my whole heart. I could probably agree with that. It says, like 85% of Americans, identify themselves as Christian. If 85% of people in any country identify themselves as Christians and really follow Jesus, it'd probably look like a very different society. That's my first clue, that the majority of people in the pews don't really follow, because the world would be a very different place if everyone really strived to follow Christ. We may not always agree on everything, but there'd be a whole lot more civil discourse and love and help for each other. Obviously, there are people who don't really want to follow. You can choose to believe, or you can choose to follow. And that's a hard choice. And we talked about that for a while. It isn't an easy decision no matter what anyone tells you. Choosing to follow Christ is hard because it means completely redefining your priorities. It means putting others first. It means carefully considering every decision. It means that you're not the leader anymore, that you are following. It means trusting. It means giving up control. Choosing to follow anyone isn't easy. If it was an easy decision for you, you might not have really ever considered the full implications of it. Because choosing to follow Christ is a lifetime commitment that is hard. Every day you have to think about every little thing you do. Is this following Christ or not? It isn't just an easy, sure, I'll follow Jesus, I'm saved. That's not what it's about. When you put it in terms of do you want to go to heaven or hell, well, that's easy. Who wants to be like, I want to go to hell, that sounds fun. Fire's great. No. When you put it in terms like that, oh yeah, I want to go to heaven. But choosing to go to heaven is not the same thing as choosing to follow Jesus Christ. I mean, the Gospels are full of things that this is this life, this is what you do today and tomorrow and the next day and the next day. Choosing to follow in this life. It's not an easy thing to do. But we often sell it as, do you want to be saved or not? I think I told the story here before, and I told it on the youth trip about this woman mystic, a saint in Basra, Iraq, who walked around town with an axe and a bucket. And she was walking around with her bucket and her axe, and everybody was like, what's with the axe and the bucket? She was like, well, the bucket of water is to douse the flames of hell. The axe is to chop down the mansions of heaven. And then let's see who loves God. Think about that. Douse the flames of hell, chop down the mansions of heaven, then let's see who loves God. There's no punishment, there's no reward. Who is in it just out of fear or just out of promise of reward? And who's in it to love and follow God? Way too often, people try to set as reward. We were walking around the streets, Jazz, and who else was with us when we were looking for your iPod? Jimmy. We saw somebody handing out tracts. Just like, do you want to burn in hell? Then don't follow Jesus. I had a little picture of the person burning. And that's how they sell it. Reward, punishment. Well, that's not what following Jesus is about. That's not what choosing to follow God is about. Do you want someone to love you because if they don't, you'll ground them? Kids, you better love me or you're going to get grounded. And if you do love me, I'll give you an allowance. Is that how you operate with your children? Is that how we should operate with God? No. It's choosing to follow. Now, the real decision is whether you choose to follow Christ in this lifetime, to really give your life over to this journey, to make decisions not based on what you'd rather do, what is easier, what is more profitable, what God would want us to do for the world. In all the scenarios, we learned how hard it really is. Let's think about it. Have you ever really decided to follow Christ? Did you decide to be a Christian, or did you decide to follow Christ? And it's hard. Sometimes you make a decision, and when that first big thing comes along that changes your lifestyle, you kind of step into like, I don't know, you kind of want to retreat back to where it was safe, back to the banks where you knew what it was solid ground, it was nice, because this new lifestyle just is a shock to your system. You know, I decided to follow Christ, and I often fail. Sometimes I just stop for a moment because some decision comes along and I'm being selfish or lazy, because it's a really hard journey. I don't always see the road that well. It's narrow after all, and there are many times I trip and I stumble and I fall and I make a fool out of myself. We all do, don't we? How many people here follow Christ perfectly? Anybody? No. We fall down, don't we? Sometimes we're walking along and suddenly we just trip over something we didn't even see coming. And we're like, wow, I didn't even see that there. But you get back up. Sometimes we stub our toe, we take a nosedive, we have bruised egos and bruised spirits, but we get up. And sometimes those falls just make us realize how much we need to be on that path. And after a while, we realize that even with falling, it's better following Jesus and falling and failing from time to time than to be anywhere else. You know, sometimes when we follow Jesus, we just get led by the Spirit. It's like the Spirit is just pulling us along, taking us exactly where we need to be, like the rapid current of a river. Like some of those of you that just get shot away. Anybody ever felt like the Spirit just pulled you in one direction? That you just felt that you didn't even have control, you were just being carried by the Spirit? Anybody ever felt like that? It's a great feeling, it's exhilarating, it's fun. But then it stops, and then you get back up, and you struggle on down the river. Sometimes when we start following Christ, we really aren't able to handle it on our own. It's a tough journey. Paul talks about these new Christians in the faith in his letter saying, you know what? Some of you can't have solid food yet. You just need milk, and we're going to help get you to solid food because you're not ready yet on your own. Sometimes when we're new Christians, we need somebody to walk with us, to help guide us, to help give us confidence and help strengthen our faith, to help us show us where to go and what to do. Kind of like a little man on the river. He couldn't quite navigate those rapids on his own, but he sure wanted to be there. And so different youth, Aaron, myself, we would take him down the river. That's what it's like to be in a church, isn't it? You're new, you need some help. You have elders, you have deacons, you have friends, you have pastors to just kind of help you along and carry you if need be. The letter we read from Sarah this morning, even sometimes when you've been walking for a long time, something comes along and you need help, you get carried by the people in these pews. Because we're all in the river, we're all in the journey together. That's what it's about. Sometimes things get in the way and try to ruin our journey. We call it sin. Some of the old stories say it all started with a snake. There are two kinds of snakes. Both snakes. Snake back in Genesis. We talked about that just a few weeks ago. It can come out to ruin our journey, right? But we can't let sin just completely destroy our hope and our faith. We can see it, we can keep our eyes open, but we get back in the river, don't we? We keep following Christ. So what would you do? What will you do? Do you believe in Jesus and go to church, or do you really follow? And be tough on yourself. We didn't let the youth off that easy. Many of them said, honestly, you know what? I believe in God. I just don't know if at this point in my life I can really follow. Or I'm still not sure what this all means for me. I need more time to really understand. Or I'm